Hi, I'm Louisa Daggers, and I'm a researcher with the Amerindian Research Unit at the University of Guyana. I'm working with Indigenous people across Guyana in several projects relating to climate change and agriculture. Guyana generally is at risk to climate change. Similarly, farmers and farming communities, this includes Indigenous people that are involved in large-scale and also subsistence farming, are also vulnerable, highly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. Because one, the coast is vulnerable to flooding, and then there's some regions that are experiencing the extremes, either extreme flooding or extreme hot periods. In our attempt to build resilience against climate change, it's important to take into consideration Indigenous traditional knowledge, especially as we build adaptive responses in the agriculture sector. Traditional knowledge fuels Indigenous communities and how they practice agriculture. They depend on this knowledge for land preparation, for harvesting, in the selection of crop, in the decision making, and how much cassava they're going to plant this year. And this is all dependent on what the agro-processing facility is like, what they're going to produce out of this cassava that they're cultivating, for example. And women play a crucial role in decision making in all of this. Indigenous women are actively involved in agriculture, even more so than persons on the coastal zone, non-Indigenous persons. They are integral in decision making, in land clearing, land preparation. They're also instrumental in deciding the crops that they're cultivating. Indigenous role in cultural subsistence strategy is instrumental in the survival of their community and in provisioning for food for their offsprings, for families, and in extension, in building social systems. They provide us with an immense knowledge in how to produce, how to care, and more often you find traditional knowledge being harnessed a lot within Indigenous communities, particularly with Indigenous women, and they transfer this knowledge from time to time through stories, music, cultural practices from their children to their grandchildren, and using language as a vehicle to transfer this information from one person to the next. Salvaging this information is important to us as we learn to adapt to climate change, because they rely significantly on biological indicators. They rely also significantly on their language to transfer this knowledge. Biological indicators generally allow communities to determine when they're gonna cultivate, when they're gonna start land preparation, when it's time to harvest. These informations generally, it's stored collectively within Indigenous communities. Women play an integral role. While it's a collective knowledge that's within communities, women are usually the backbone in the agriculture sector. When their husbands are away in the logging, conducting logging activities, doing gathering of NTFPs, or in the gold industry, women are at home cultivating, caring for their children. And climate change is impacting all of this in one way or another. Take, for example, the role of women in farming. With climate change, that now it's additional preparation. Extended period of time being spent at the farm, less time being spent at home with children. So it creates an environment where there's a lot more stress on women within Indigenous communities. However, it's important for us to recognize that they're adapting pretty well in some communities, but there's also the need for the integration of climate-smart agriculture in many of these Indigenous communities to allow people to cope with the impacts of climate change and also to deal with their necessities of day-to-day life, caring for children, doing the regular social activities that people are usually involved in. Women are also responsible for marketing, all of the value-added products that they're producing, farine, cassava bread. This is largely the role of women. Individually, collectively as a family, collectively as a community, they do this together. And then they also have the burden of going out there and seeking markets and selling this product. So they play a very instrumental role in ensuring that their subsistence strategy and their culture remains alive. If they don't do this, then eventually parts of their social system will fall apart. So this is why it's important for us to recognize the value of Indigenous people and the value of the information they can contribute to us in adapting to climate change, especially with regard to agriculture. Because it's invaluable information that can only be documented over time through conservation, through storytelling, through ethnographic research. So this is something that really needs to be taken into account, especially when we plan ahead with regard to, how are we going to address issues of climate change. This is not a one-off event. It's something that's been occurring for many, many years, and Indigenous people for thousands of years have adapted to climate change. 8,000 years ago, based on archaeological records, Indigenous people have been occupying Guyana's landscape on the coast. And over that period of time, they have developed subsistence strategy. They've begun domestication of tubers, of animals, of plants, and because it's important for the existence of communities. And this is where the role of women and communities collectively can help us in understanding how to cope and how to adapt to climate change as we see it today. It might be something that's new to us, but it's very much real, and it's not new to Indigenous communities.